Hi everyone, Brian Neubert here from GoldandBlack.com, live at his desk, here to cut a quick video just with some thoughts about the start of Purdue basketball off-season practice for one reason and one reason alone. Our platform at On3, we have an autoplay video that populates onto each one of our stories, and I just wanted something relevant to be able to package with all of our basketball stuff to come, and there will be a lot of it this week and on into the summer. So you're going to be seeing this video a lot. It's just going to be a standing bit of window dressing. And what kind of window anyone would ever dress up with pictures of me, I have no idea. But so I'm just going to talk about kind of Purdue basketball summer here for a second or two to make sure that there aren't highlights of an Alabama corner recruit populating with all of our stories about like Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and so on and so forth. So I know you like the Alabama commitment highlight videos, but I'd prefer there to be something a little more relevant locked into all of our basketball content. So look, Purdue opens practice for the summer on Tuesday after school begins on Monday. 5 freshmen are here. That number has gone from 6 to 5 after Cannon Catchings walked away from his commitment to Purdue and got cut loose. So it'll be a very different summer for Purdue, very different personnel. No Ross-Ade anymore, perhaps you've heard. But plenty of good established players back, plenty of personnel assets, plenty of reason to believe that there's a lot to work with here for this team to continue to be very good. Obviously, this is a summer of kind of reinvention. The old cliche of reloading, not rebuilding, I think probably applies to Purdue here. But Purdue is going to have to change. It is going to have to figure out a new sort of model for this team with these players. Ross-Ade was their centerpiece on both offense and defense. And Purdue is going to have to figure out some ways to reacclimate without that presence, college basketball's signature presence at both ends of the floor here the last 2 years, if not but even longer than that, when you take into account some of the big men who preceded Ross-Ade at Purdue. So the reinvention of Purdue is going to be kind of the story of the summer, and that takes place at both ends of the floor. Purdue is going to have to retool offensively. I think when you look at what they did last year with going to more pick and roll with Ross-Ade and Braden Smith on top of all the many set plays they had in their playbook, they're going to have to probably tweak a lot of that stuff, probably come up with a bread and butter sort of go-to element like they did last year with Braden Smith and Ross-Ade, who were really good together. You're probably not going to be able to replace that right away. I think that Trey Kaufman-Renn slips right into Ross-Ade's usage to a certain extent, probably not quite as extensive. I don't think you're looking to get the ball inside first, second, and third priority every time down the floor. And I don't think Purdue did last year. I think their offense was much more balanced, much more spread out from a responsibility perspective. I think that's probably how it is this year. But Trey Kaufman-Renn will get plenty of post touches. And I think if you've read and watched our stuff over the years, you have heard me say many times that you slide Trey Kaufman-Renn into higher usage, you're getting productivity. You look at the Illinois game in Mackey Arena way back when Ross-Ade got in foul trouble. That was a great model for what's to come. You give Trey Kaufman-Renn touches, you give him usage, you get productivity. That's just the way it's always been. That's the way it's going to be this year. What it's going to do is it's going to put a lot of emphasis on his decision-making. Obviously, if he's effective to the point where he starts commanding attention, commanding that extra defender, the passing piece of it, the decision-making piece of it really comes to the forefront. And that's where he's going to have to grow as a player as his usage really explodes. But he gives Purdue a little bit of flexibility. I think Purdue's going to keep running pick and roll with him. We'll see how he handles it, but he does some short roll stuff in terms of being able to make runners and make mid-range jumpers, kind of things like that, drive off closeouts that maybe Zach-Edey didn't. There's no conceivable way that Trey Kaufman-Renn is going to be better in pick and roll than Zach-Edey, but it will be different. If you go back and watch that Illinois game, you saw some real flashes of things he can do that Zach-Edey couldn't do. Now, he's not going to bring down the backboard on lobs or anything like that the way Zach-Edey could, but he's going to have a chance to be really effective. He's going to give you the ability to play a little bit more 5-out, because I think that he's going to put a lot of time into working on his 3, and I think his work will pay off in that regard. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to shoot 5 of them a game, and I don't think he's going to be like a 40-45% type of guy, but I think he'll be credible, and I think he will play more facing the basket from the mid-range to be able to drive on people, get into his moves, dribble into post-ups, things like that. So you're going to see a little bit of a different dynamic with Trey Kaufman-Renn, obviously, versus what you saw from Zach-Edey. Obviously, Zach-Edey is a unicorn of a player at the college level, so anything you put out there was going to be different. But I think this is going to be obviously a situation where things are more spread out. Braden Smith is going to have to carry more of the offense. I think it's important that he find a sidekick the way he had with Zach-Edey. Again, you're not replacing Zach-Edey, but what's to say Camden Heide can't be a pick and roll guy? What's to say Miles Colvin can't do some pick and roll stuff? Trey Kaufman-Renn's going to do some pick and roll stuff. Obviously, when you have one of the best point guards in the country to start off with, that's a hell of a starting point. But they're going to have to figure out, some things that really work for him and really work for this new set of personnel here. I think that Fletcher Lawyer, this is a big year for him. I think that he's going to have the ball in his hands more. I think they're going to run more stuff for him. I think they're going to need him to score a little bit more, be a little bit more aggressive, make really good decisions when he's being aggressive, things like that. He does not have Zach-Edey to kind of play off anymore. He may not have as much of a runway to just kind of ease into things or play off other people the way he did the last couple of years. I think he's going to have to be more aggressive. I think he's going to have to be more productive, and I think he will be. I think he's a really good player, better than he gets credit for. I think I was his only All-Big Ten vote probably, and I would do that again in a heartbeat if I had to do it all over again, because I think he had a very good sophomore year, and I think things really change when guys go from one usage level to another, and I think he will. His role this season will really, really change. Much more will be asked of him, and I think he will deliver. And then you have these two wings here in Camden Heide and Miles Colvin, who Purdue has a long track record of guys making huge jumps from year 1 to year 2. You look at what Braden Smith did this year. You look at what some other guys in the past have done, Caleb Swanigan, etc. I'm not saying either of these guys are going to have that sort of jump, but you never know. And I think Miles Colvin has all the talent in the world, and I think he's a guy, again, who is going to get cast into more usage, a much bigger role. But also that comes with the responsibility to be more of a complete player than he was at the start of last year. I think the Miles Colvin you saw at the end of last year was very different than the one you saw at the start of last year. And I think that's an immense compliment to Miles Colvin's maturity as a player, his improvement, his understanding of what it takes to go from just being a talented player to being a winning player. And I think now is kind of his time already. And I think they're going to really try to feature him offensively. I think he's going to have every opportunity to really make a huge jump from one year to the next. But it is up to him. It is up to him. I think Camden Heide is a guy who, fit in as needed last year and did a really good job. How he takes that as his foundation and builds on it this year, obviously, is going to be one of the more interesting personnel topics for this Purdue team this year. I think my educated guess is that he opens up practice as Purdue's starting forward, i.e. four-man. There's really only one forward position in college basketball anymore, so forward and four are kind of synonymous in my mind. I think Camden Heide is going to slide over into that position. To start with, we'll have some flexibility in terms of what he can do, where he can play, who he can guard, things like that. But he will be guarded at times, provided this sticks, by bigger, maybe slower players. That will kind of put an onus on his ability to kind of create things against favorable matchups. I think, again, I said this before, this is my personal opinion. This is not really coming from anybody in the know, but I don't see why you can't run some unconventional pick and roll with this offensive set of characters. And that could mean using him as your roll man. That could mean kind of putting him in positions against other four-men where you kind of unsettle things by running a ball screen for Braden Smith with Camden Heide, and now all of a sudden Camden Heide has somebody scrambling out to him, or an open three, or a straight line drive to the basket, kind of something like that, or a roll for a lob, something like that. There are just really some intriguing possibilities with how Purdue can use him offensively. I think that you can be a little bit more up-tempo now. Purdue did not play slow with Zach Edey. That is a misnomer. People look at Zach Edey and think that he was just walking down the floor, establishing his position, and just staying there. Not reality at all. This was a ball screen offense. This was an offense that looked to push the ball whenever it could. Lance Jones was a big part of that. That is a dimension that is also going to be missed. That ability to turn the floor over in a heartbeat. But I think Purdue's got a lot of offensive assets here. Good enough shooting to continue to be a good shooting team, maybe without the dominant physical presence on the interior, but something that can absolutely positively translate to this new set of personnel. Defensively and rebounding, there's going to be some big transitions there. Obviously, Purdue's centerpiece on defense the last couple of years was Zach Edey, protecting the rim. When you got him away from the basket a little bit, got him into his drop coverage in pick and roll, things like that. That's when people. There were some vulnerabilities there defensively for Purdue, but at the end of the day, he was an excellent rim protector. He was a dominant rebounder. And rebounding is part of defense. Defensive rebounding is part of defense. People sometimes separate those two things as two different categories of basketball. They are one and the same. They go hand in hand. However you want to phrase it, that is what it is. So Purdue's not going to replace that. They aren't going to have, one of college basketball's preeminent rim protectors behind its guys containing the dribble anymore. And that is a big deal. That is a big deal. That you could make the case that Purdue has to reinvent itself defensively even more than it does offensively without Zach Edey. Trey Kaufman-Moran is, kind of a power forward who will be playing center. Basically, how he holds up over 30-plus minutes a game defensively, battling other centers, remains to be seen. That's why I'm going to go ahead and speculate that he's also going to play some forward. And that's where you need another big guy to kind of emerge here as somebody who can carry big minutes for you. That could be Will Berg. He obviously has the size to be an impactful player. Did some really positive things in really low leverage situations last year. And I think there is a big difference between being a guy who plays in those situations versus a guy who's counted on, who has to know what he's doing in very competitive moments. But Berg has shown some real promise. But Daniel Jacobson, the freshman coming in, the 7'3", freshman coming in, who's with USA Basketball up until the very start of Purdue's practice here, is going to be Purdue's best shot blocker from day one. He's mobile, he's long, he's offensively skilled, and I think Purdue is going to need to get him on the floor in some capacity. That is going to help them maybe from a rim protection perspective. Things like that. Caleb First is back as well. He'll play the 4 and 5. This is a big year for him, obviously. He fell out of the rotation at the end of last year. He's a senior now. He has to, if he wants a major role in this team, he needs to have a big time offseason, things like that. Really figure out some things where he can set himself apart to get out there alongside Trey Kaufman-Renn, alongside Daniel Jacobson a long time, alongside Will Berg, kind of things like that. But defensively, Purdue might have the personnel to be a little more pressure-oriented now that it's really not college basketball anymore. But in Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, you have two really interchangeable wings, which is a big deal. Switching screens and being able to pressure ball screens and things like that. You might not have to. You might be able to hedge a little bit more on ball screens if you want to. Whether or not that is Trey Kaufman-Renn's strength, I don't know. It might be Daniel Jacobson's. It might be Will Berg's. We don't know. Will Berg is very mobile for a 7+ footer. So is Daniel Jacobson. You might have some flexibility there to do some different things. I don't ever see Matt Painter becoming a zone coach, but he did try some different things this year. There might be some different things he's got in store this year to help contain the dribble. It's going to be up to those guards and those wings to really keep their man in front of them because you don't have Ross-Ade back there anymore. So what sort of wrinkles they add from a defensive perspective remains to be seen. I couldn't even speculate on what that might be, but I'd imagine that they will tweak some things here. I think those wings have to be really good defensively. Camden Heide, Miles Colvin. This opens up an opportunity too for Brian Waddell to get back in the rotation. Things like that, and those are all pretty interchangeable guys who can all have the physical ability to be pretty good defensive players. So that's obviously going to be another really big key here, is how Purdue reinvents itself. From a freshman perspective, Jakari Harris and C.J. Cox are both very defensive-minded guards as well. I'd expect at this point both of them to have opportunities to play this year. How that helps Purdue from a defensive perspective, counting on freshmen to help you defensively, to make you better defensively, is usually a really, really risky endeavor. But between those two guys and Daniel Jacobson and his shot blocking potential, I think that there's a core here defensively that can show up starting right now, but also really, really have a high impact at that end of the floor kind of moving forward. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. From a freshman perspective, Jakari Harris is going to play. I think he was the most important recruit in this class. Purdue needed him, needed a player like him now. I think Daniel Jacobson has shown at USA Basketball that he is ready now to help Purdue. And I think it's going to be in Purdue's best interest to get him on the floor now. Not just because he might give you that rim protection element I mentioned earlier, but because playing now might make him better next year and the year after that. And I think he's got a chance to be a really, really good player. And accelerating that development is sort of a common denominator among Purdue's great bigs in the past. They got him on the floor as a freshman. They played through some mistakes, and they got better on the fly. Things like that. C.J. Cox is probably in that mix to play as well. Purdue does need a backup point guard to Braden Smith, a backup ball handler. Both he and Jakari Harris are multi-positional sorts of guys who can play the 1 and 2, maybe the 3 to a certain extent. Jakari Harris can guard a lot of positions. C.J. Cox, I assume, can guard a couple of positions. Both of them can shoot. So that's, I think those are going to be guys you're going to count on this year. And their learning curve this summer is going to be really important. Cannon Catchings departing really doesn't change a whole lot, in my opinion. He was going to play for Purdue, I think, this year. He could have been a really good player for Purdue in time. I think Jacobson is the best prospect in this class, personally. But I think that you don't have a desperate need in areas where Cannon Catchings would have helped you right away. So you can't lose what you never had, right? So I don't think that was a blow that's going to change Purdue's outlook this season as much as people who are just looking at rankings might suggest. There's a lot of people on the internet talking about Cannon Catchings in Purdue that have no idea what they're talking about. I'll just tell you that right now. He had a chance to be really good. Whether that was going to translate right now, that is debatable. I think that there were some landmines there where if he wasn't, happy at the end of the year, he's somebody who could have gone a lot of different ways on you. I'm not saying that to trash the kid or anything like that. I'm just telling you how it is. And, Purdue has been built on pretty good chemistry. It's been built on relative harmony for the most part here for a few years, and that is going to be its utmost priority. So Purdue has everything in place now to continue to be really good. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Wren, that is a hell of a three-man core to start around. You've got guys who are really going to make jumps from year one to year two, I think. You've got a really good and a really timely freshman class coming in that can help you right away. Purdue can continue to be really good this year, vie for a Big Ten title, obviously make the NCAA tournament, get a pretty decent seed. I don't think they're, a Final Four likelihood this year. But then when you look at next year, that could be an undercurrent to this season, at least in terms of the way I'm going to cover this. Keep Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Wren. There's no reason to think otherwise. Camden Heide, Miles Colvin get better this year. The freshmen get some experience. Next year, all of a sudden, is a year where you can, start looking at Purdue as a team capable of returning to the very place where they finished last season. Not Glendale, Arizona, wherever the Final Four would happen to be. If they go to Glendale and there's no Final Four there, that'd be problematic. So, look, that's what I got. This was simply window dressing for our many, many, many articles and analyses to come from the start of Purdue basketball practice, which is Tuesday. So that's kind of what I got. So thank you for watching this. I'm sorry that my face is going to precede all of our basketball coverage here this summer, but it is what it is. So thanks, everybody.